My side of the family skipped my husband's funeral because they were busy trying to control and seize the money raised for our son and for his life insurance. I fought back with receipts, set hard boundaries, and found a different kind of family in the people who showed up. The door to the memorial hall opened and closed with the slight whoosh of the summer air, but nobody from my side of the family walked through it. Left side of the room, where we'd tucked the little tent cards that said family, stayed empty. Chairs lined up like a mouth kept shut, every seat a promise unkept. Ben's coworkers in their gray work shirts filled the right. A couple of my students' parents slipped in quiet as a whisper. Our neighbor, Liz, sat up front with Noah and a backpack full of snacks and tissues. The little white lilies on the table trembled any time someone brushed past them. A 5x7 of Ben in his navy sweatshirt, laughing into the wind he always pretended he could outrun, stared back at me. At 9:08 a.m. my phone buzzed where I'd left it face down under my program. One text, then another. I didn't look. Someone behind me shifted and coughed. When the director gave me the nod, I stood at the podium, the coach of a team with too few players. Thank you, I said, voice steady like a line drawn in pencil so you can go over it twice. Thank you for being here for Ben. I didn't glance left. I didn't say the part one was thinking, the part that sat like a stone in my mouth. My family isn't coming. They said they can't be part of this while there's active litigation. Noah's small hand slid into mine. I squeezed without looking. We both knew which side of the room we belonged to. My name is Lauren Avery. I used to think of my life as a clear, two-lane road through Hawthorne, Ohio. Ranch houses, a Target with a cranky sliding door, a river with enough tree shade that even August had places to hide. I teach 4th grade at Maple Ridge Elementary. Or I did. Before my life got split into tiny pockets of minutes, insulin counts, and waiting rooms. Ben was a journeyman electrician for a company that stitched little lightning bolts onto their shirts right above the pocket. He had hands that always smelled like pine sap or copper, depending on the month. He could tell what was wrong with a ceiling fan by the sound it made. He'd hum while he worked, that tune from the beer commercial everybody knew but nobody admitted knowing. The first day I met him, he was leaning on a cart of light fixtures at Hardware and Home, debating with an old man about dimmer switches. I'm a teacher, I said, stepping into the conversation to say something, anything. He turned toward me like I'd just lit up a room for him. I can't compete with that, he said. It made 0 sense and also everything. We married under a big maple in my friend's backyard, paper cranes strung up between branches. It was simple because we were practical and because my parents had a way of treating my choices like a test I could fail. My mom, Cynthia, wore navy and a face that said she could rewrite the script better if you gave her 5 minutes and a flat surface. My dad, Max, smiled a lot in public and had notes for everything in private. They praised our small, smart wedding and then asked 3 separate times if we'd considered moving closer to them so we could help out. Ben's family was just his sister, Jenna, and her wife, Cheryl. Their parents were gone by then. Jenna hugged me like I was already a sister, which is to say, she bruised and I loved it. My best friend, Tasha, did my makeup and cried in the bathroom because she was so happy and also kind of hungover, which was peak Tasha. We bought a 2-bedroom on Juniper Lane with a chain-link fence line that let you see the neighbors' dogs without having to commit to conversation. Ben installed a ceiling fan in each room and a dimmer switch in our kitchen. Saturday mornings, we'd bike to the farmer's market. I'd plan out dinner. He'd sneak donuts into the bag when he thought I wasn't looking. I kept a book in my purse like a second wallet. Noah was born in late October. The trees in Hawthorne do that thing where they pretend they're caught fire right before the first frost. He cried a lot, and then, suddenly, he didn't. He had one of those baby smiles that feels like someone's handing you a secret and then tells you to keep it safe in your pocket. My mom came over with a label maker and a stack of articles printed off the internet. Max brought a whiteboard and wrote down our lists like he was running a meeting. It was helpful and exhausting. Tasha showed up with Thai food and a box of size 2 diapers she'd scored with a coupon. She was texting between feeding me soup with a spoon. Listen, she said, I'm here for whatever. Need a spreadsheet? Need someone to call your utility and negotiate the stupid deposit because apparently you moved 15 feet and that's a whole new world. I got you. That was Tasha. Too much sometimes. Always with a solution. Noah got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes 2 weeks after his third birthday. It was a Monday at 1:14 p.m. I remember because I kept looking at the clock in the ER like it could prove something else might happen if I stared hard enough. He was thirstier than usual, peeing through his diapers. Our pediatrician sent us straight to Riverview Medical Center, just to be safe. Safe turned into scary, turned into a nurse named Latrice teaching me how to prick my son's finger at 2 a.m. without waking him up. The numbers on the meter blinked back at me like I was learning a new language based on urgency. Dr. Alvarez, the pediatric endocrinologist, was the calm you hope for in a storm. "This is manageable," she said, laying out syringes like a deck of cards. "You're going to be good at this, Lauren." Ben sat in the plastic chair that folded expectations down to half their size and whispered to Noah, "Buddy, we got this," like he was making a promise that would last longer than his own breath. We went home with a cooler full of insulin, an insulin pump pamphlet, and a binder that I filled with numbers. Carbs in a slice of pizza. Carbs in half an apple. Carbs in the entire world. The nights changed first. There's a specific terror in being up at 2 a.m. and spooning in a half-awake child's mouth a juice box while counting 3, 6, 9 sips because the meter says he's dropping too fast. Ben did the poking more often. I did the math. We both did the not sleeping. We put a tiny bell on our bedroom door that linked to his Dexcom app alert, a little chime that could send me from REM to ready in 2 seconds. At Maple Ridge, we met with the school nurse, Miss Hollister, and wrote out a 504 plan. We showed Noah where the juice boxes lived in her bottom desk drawer. He took it in like a kid who has only known life as a thing you must hold with 2 hands. "So if I feel weird, I tell," he said. "And if I don't feel weird, I still tell." My parents treated the diagnosis like information they could wrestle into submission if they asked enough questions aggressively. My mom printed out low-glycemic recipes and slid them across my counter. "Just think of this as your full-time job now," she said. "No cheating." I looked at Ben, who was stirring chili like it owed him money, and smiled without showing my teeth. "I'm still a teacher," I said. "And a mom. We can do this and live." "They'll make an exception for absences, right?" my dad asked, marker hovering above the whiteboard he set up in my kitchen. "We'll talk to the principal." "I can talk to the principal." "I already spoke with her," I said. "It's handled." Tasha stepped into our kitchen later with a bag that said Reed Credit Union because everything in her life doubled as marketing. "I set up a little fundraiser link in case you want to go for the pump sooner," she said. "No fees if we keep it internal. People love to help if you make it easy." I hesitated. Ben squeezed my hand behind the counter. "Thanks, Tash," he said. "Let's figure out what we actually need first." We did get the pump. We paid half ourselves, which felt like climbing a hill that just when you think you've reached the top, shows you there's another slope behind it. The other half came from people who left notes in our mailbox. A maple syrup bottle on our porch with an envelope tucked under the cap. A parent who knew me from school slid me a 50 in the parking lot in a handshake that said, "Don't make this a thing." Noah learned to point to the kitchen magnet that said carb charts are my superpower and grin like he meant it. We started sleeping more again. I thought maybe the road would smooth out. And then Ben found blood. He brushed it off until he couldn't. He told me it was probably hemorrhoids. He said it under the light of the bathroom like if he said it bright, it would be true. I made an appointment and he went because he loved me. The colonoscopy found a tumor he named and then didn't say out loud again. Stage 3. 2 words that changed air. "I can work through chemo," he told me, while Dr. Chen explained Folfox like she was teaching us to tango and apologized for stepping on our feet. "Guys in the shop have done it. I can do it." "Let's just see how your body does," Dr. Chen said. She had a voice you'd follow into a dark room. I watched him sit in the infusion chair at Riverview with a baseball cap pulled low, blinking like he could hide his eyes and keep the rest of himself visible. They poked a port into his chest that made a small bump under his skin. He developed that cold sensitivity where water from the fridge felt like needles. His hands, his electrician hands, tingled. He threw up quieter than I would have. He started stopping after half a flight of stairs. We started living in fragments. School drop-off. Chemo on Tuesdays. 504 plan review meetings. An inhaled breath when the price at the pharmacy register flashed higher than we planned for. We were fine, we kept telling each other. We were fine until we weren't, and then we were fine again because we took turns being the one who needed the other. In the spaces where real life tried to sit down, my parents wedged themselves in with a clipboard. "It's time to look at your budget," my mom said, pulling up a spreadsheet printed in grayscale, the numbers too small. "Your eating outline is absurd." "We eat out," Ben said, voice genuinely curious. "That was a Safeway rotisserie chicken," I said. "We can help," my dad said, which in our family came with a footnote I didn't read until I was 30. "We'll spot you 10. He meant 1,000. They said it like a favor and an obligation. "Just so you don't have to put copays on a credit card like people with no plan." He wrote up a simple loan agreement on his laptop with a fill-in-the-blanks template. "Standard stuff," he said. "Low interest. Family rates. But we should secure it. With the house." I looked at Ben, who stared at the spot on the table where a knot in the wood looked like a small, startled eye. "We'll think about it," I said. He nodded like someone who'd just decided to believe in gravity. That was before Tasha started calling me at night with ideas. She wanted to set up a trust for Noah, she said. "We have a department. We have people. It keeps money safe and ensures he's covered. Your dad can be trustee. You need someone strong who isn't emotionally compromised." "I'm not compromised," I said. "I'm tired." "You're swimming in it, Lore," she said. "Love. It's a lot. Let us handle the dry math." I told her I'd talk to Ben. I did not tell her that the hairs on my arms were standing up without a breeze. By round 3 of chemo, Ben was calling me from the stairwell at work, whispering like he didn't want the pipes to hear him breathe. "I can't finish today," he said. "My legs feel like sand." He never missed a day before he started missing them all at once. His supervisor, Paul, said to take the time. Use FMLA. Rest was not a suggestion in that voice. Ben listened. The grocery bills climbed. Insulin didn't ask when it took a bite out of your account. The out-of-pocket cap reset January 1st like a joke that didn't land. Our savings looked like a puddle the sun found too quickly. I picked up extra shifts after school, tutoring an IEP that needed someone to sit and listen while a parent cried into a paper towel. I started selling lesson plans online at midnight with eyes that felt like I'd wiped them with sandpaper. It was at our kitchen table, under the dimmer switch Ben installed low because he thought bright light at night woke the house too hard, that my parents slid across the loan agreement again. "This is us protecting you from yourselves," my mom said, like nobody's adult life deserved privacy from her red pen. "We don't want to be the bank. We want to be the buffer. But we need this to be clean." Clean meant a lien on the house. Clean meant, if we couldn't pay by their schedule, they could take steps. My dad smiled like a dentist. Tasha was there, because Tasha had a way of being there at the exact times that made you question whether you invited her. "If we set up the trust," she said, tapping the papers with a purple gel pen, "we do this right. Life insurance goes right into it if worst case." She didn't say Ben's name. She didn't have to. The trustee, so Max, would ensure distributions are for Noah. Medical. School. Not for frivolities. Like groceries? Ben said, dry. He was losing his hair. He kept it hidden under that baseball cap until he took it off one day and said, "Screw it," and Noah ran his hand over his father's head and said it felt like a peach who was trying to be brave. "You can do both," Tasha said. "Put the house under the trust too if you're thinking long-term. Protection from creditors." "We don't have creditors," I said. She lifted one shoulder. The gesture said, "Yet." "I think we need an attorney who isn't close to us," Ben said. He looked at my parents when he said it. He looked at Tasha. No one flinched, but the room temperature changed by a degree you didn't need a thermometer for. "Oh, we can set that up," my dad said quickly. "We know a guy. Family friend. He'll do it cheap." "We'd like someone we choose," I said. Silence, like a dropped plate we all waited to hear hit the floor. We didn't sign. We did borrow $3,000 because, and this part goes in a file labeled depressing truths I don't want to know but do now, you can't argue with the pharmacy register when you're holding a child and a bag of supplies that keeps him alive. We paid them back in 2 months. My mom treated me like I needed to send an additional thank you card anyway. Then in late March, while Ben was between rounds and trying to eat frozen grapes without glaring at the bowl, Tasha launched a fundraiser for us without asking. She called it Light Up the Field for Ben, and the flyer had a photo of our family at the 4th of July picnic, all of us in sun-bleached red shirts. "It's a community night," she said, proud, handing me a stack of flyers like I was her assistant. "Food trucks, the high school band, we sell those paper lanterns, all proceeds to help your family. We'll set up a dedicated account at the credit union. No one needs to go through GoFundMe's fees. It's cleaner." I was tired. The way fatigue wraps your bones and whispers, "Stop making this harder just because your gut is uneasy." I thanked her. She hugged me. Her perfume left a citrus everywhere. The night was beautiful. The teenagers made a tunnel of light with their glow sticks. People hugged us with their eyes. Somebody left a check folded into a paper crane. Noah sat on Ben's shoulders and pointed at a lantern that took off across the field like it knew where it was going. My parents stood near the entrance with clipboards, corralling donors to the table where Tasha's tellers and polos took checks and cash. "Transparency," she said with a tight smile. "We'll send you monthly statements." The next morning, I had a voicemail from my mom. "Incredible turnout. This is why we need to ensure the funds are used responsibly. There is already talk. You need a gatekeeper." I made pancakes and poured syrup from the maple bottle the neighbor left us. I told Ben I would get those monthly statements and keep them in the binder where I tracked everything else. He nodded. "You're good at the binder," he said. "I'm better with the slow cooker." The first statement came as a one-page PDF with a single number and no line items. I emailed Tasha and said I needed details for our records. She said, "Of course, honey. We'll get that all set." Honey in the wrong mouth can sound like a threat. At school, we updated the 504 plan. Miss Hollister highlighted lines and scowled at nothing. "We got you, kid," she told Noah. "And your mama. This is not new to us." She handed me a list of field trip dates and said which ones she would attend herself. The CPS call came 2 weeks later. A knock at the door that landed like an accusation even before I opened it. The social worker had a kind face and a stack of forms. "We received an anonymous report," she said gently, "about potential medical neglect. We can talk through it." I brought out the binder. I brought out a grocery bag full of empty insulin boxes because I hadn't made it to the recycling. I brought out Noah, who showed her how he did his finger prick like a pro. The social worker's gaze softened. "This happens," she said. "You'd be surprised how often. I'm sorry to bother you." She paused at the door. "You're doing a good job." My mom called a day later. "Unbelievable," she said, voice like she'd been personally affronted by something she engineered. "So many crazies out there. This is why, Lauren. This is exactly why we need structure. People respect it. They don't respect single decisions." "Excuse me," I said. She changed the subject so hard it could have bruised someone. My dad sent a link to a generic trust template. Tasha sent a thumbs-up emoji in a text alone, so it shimmered like it wanted to be eager. I muted their thread for a week and felt immediately disloyal and sanitary at the same time. Ben had surgery. 2 inches of his colon. Robots did it through little holes, and his nurse said the word laparoscopic like a mantra. He came home walking like a paper doll held too stiff. Noah climbed into his lap and said, "I can be light," and somehow managed it. We made a fort with a blanket and watched the ceiling fan turn low. For 3 days, it felt like maybe we'd keep resetting, like the world would allow it. My dad left an envelope on our porch. It was a promissory note for $25,000. Interest at 3%. Due in 18 months. He wrote "Love you" in the memo line, which made my stomach hurt. A post-it from my mom said, "We need this, Lauren. You're not thinking long-term. Be an adult." The binder sat open on the table, the weight of the hole punch leaning into it, like it needed to be sure my papers wouldn't escape. There are moments you don't realize are thresholds until you look behind you later and see the doorframe. For me, the hospital corridor on a Friday, when the fluorescents felt like they'd burned the color out of our skin. Ben was quiet still. Chemo had chewed up his appetite, and the fever that had sent us in at midnight hadn't broken. My parents arrived in their best outfits for a performance. Tasha wore a pencil skirt and the smile people wear when they're about to pitch you something you'll want to say no to. I thought, in a flicker that felt like I was thinking through gauze, how odd to dress up for my husband being hooked to and for. Sit, I said, because I believed in pretending we could crash into normal from any angle, any time. We don't have time, my dad said. He set a folder on the end of Ben's hospital bed like it was a desk and flipped it open. We need signatures before he's sedated again. Signatures for what? Ben asked, eyes slotted open, voice dull at the edges. The trust, my mom said, as if it were obvious, as if we'd been working toward this at the same pace. We need you to designate Max as trustee. And we need the beneficiary on your life insurance updated to the trust name. It's easy. We have a notary downstairs. Tasha pulled out a pen like a magician producing a dove. I pre-filled some things to make it simple. Silence. The kind that grows legs. We talked about this, my dad said, impatience pumping into his tone like air into a tire. We can't keep going in circles. You need to do this before something catastrophic happens. This protects Noah. No, I said. Not whispered. Not polite. No. Tasha blinked like someone had taken a flash photo. Lore, it's standard. We're just trying to help you structure. People donate more when they know there's oversight. People gave because they love us, I said. Oversight is me. You are not using my husband's fever to get him to sign his money to you. My mom's eyes narrowed. To Noah, she corrected. It's to Noah. If you cared about that boy, you would think about the optics and the reality. You are emotional, Lauren. That's not a judgment. It's a fact you can step around if you choose to. Ben put his hand on mine, turning my palm up like he was lifting a stone to see what lived under it. We're not doing this, he said. He looked at my parents. He looked at Tasha. He did not blink. Not today. Not here. Probably not ever. My dad made an exasperated noise I recognized from childhood dinners when I disagreed on things like my career or my haircut. Don't be a fool, Ben. If you die, get out, I said. Each word its own thing. Leave. Now. Tasha's mouth formed a perfect O, excuse me. Please, I said, and the please was for the nurse at the desk listening and the woman mopping and the version of me that wanted to make this easier by playing along. This is a hospital. My husband has a fever. We're not doing this. A security guard arrived after a quiet call was placed I did not witness. He was nice about it. He asked for IDs and whether we wanted him to escort them out. My parents refused to look at me. Tasha looked at the room like it was a stage that had betrayed her. They left with the folder like someone might steal it if it didn't stay clutched in a hand. In the elevator bay, my mom turned and said, I cannot believe you would humiliate us like this. The doors closed on her anger, and I imagined it riding down, pressing itself into the lobby floor. Within a week, Ms. Hollister forwarded me an email. It was from Tasha to the PTO list, BCC'd so nobody could reply all, discussing best practices for donation stewardship and the possibility of an alternative memorial event organized by responsible parties. It was coded and it was loud. 2 days after that, a woman from CPS, different face, same folder, knocked on my door again. She looked tired of her job and human in the way you want government workers to be. Another anonymous report, she said, apologetic. Something about unclean needles and, I'm sorry, I have to say it, insulin misuse. I laughed, one of those sharp, wrong laughs that shows up when your body runs out of tears, but you're not done expressing things. I have a binder, I said. She smiled. We both knew what that meant by now. I showed her Noah's Dexcom logs. I showed her the 504 plan. I showed her the sterile swabs. I showed her the little Sharps container decorated with dinosaur stickers, because you can either cry about medical waste or you can turn it into a project. She wrote things down on her form, checked boxes, and closed it gently. Can I be honest? She said at the end, one hand on her bag, half turned toward the door. This is often about family. People who want control, people who disagree. We'll note this. Again. We'll mark it as malicious reporting if it happens a third time. I'm sorry. Ben watched from the kitchen doorway, one hand on the frame like he didn't trust the room to stay upright. I'm sorry you have to deal with us, he said to her. She shook her head like he'd told a joke she couldn't laugh at on the job. We changed locks. We blocked numbers. My parents sent a certified letter, the kind that requires a signature to make their guilt feel more official. It said we were obstructing necessary financial protections and that they would have to consider legal remedies. I signed the postal slip and put the letter on top of the fridge until I was sure I could open it without throwing it. It took me a week. Tasha sent a text. Love you. But you're spiraling and I can't watch you self-sabotage. Let me help. Please. I typed and deleted 8 responses. I texted back, stop. The road behind me had a door frame with a scratch on it at about eye level. The scratch said, you won't go back through here. Not the same. Ben was tired in a way that changed his voice. It got smaller, then steadier. He'd wake at 3 a.m., sit on the edge of the bed, and let me press my palm to his back like I could push the pain away with warmth. Chemo paused and surgery worked, and then nodes lit up on a scan like stars we didn't want to chart. There is a way of hearing we're going to try a different protocol that makes you both appreciate science and want to throw your shoe at a wall. In late April, when hawks circling the river looked lazy and purposeful at the same time, I put on jeans that had holes that were earned and drove to a storefront law office on Monroe Street. Not my parents' last name, but close enough to taste it. The sign said Kylie and Ortega. I picked them because Liz's husband had used them when a contractor tried to keep his deposit. Normal people law. Not overcomplicated, not underpowered. The intake paralegal, a guy too young to have already figured out how to look like he belonged to a desk, handed me tissues like offering them was his superpower. We do wills and trusts, he said. We do guardianships. We do those letters people need to shake awake lenders. Here's what we don't do: mess around with your reality. So just say what's true and we'll fit the law around it as best we can. Attorney Kylie was middle-aged and carried a canvas bag that said "World's Okayest Lawyer," which either means you trust a person or you don't. I did. I told him everything because shame is useless when you need help and because I'm good at lists. He let me lay out receipts like a trail. We made a will. Simple. We named Jenna as Noah's guardian if anything happened to both of us. We set up a trust for Noah that would, yes, control life insurance, but with me as trustee while I was alive and a bank, not a person as backup. An institution has policies you can get mad at and still be protected by. We designated a healthcare proxy. We put instructions in a folder that said in red, "Listen to Lauren." It felt obscene to write that, and necessary. Ben nodded through the documents, occasionally glancing at me like the horizon was something I could choose for both of us. We also wrote a letter to my parents. Attorney Kylie drafted it because it's easier to be unkind in your head than on official paper. It said, "Thank you for your concern. We will not be adding you as trustees. We request no financial contact beyond normal, case-by-case family interactions. We will not be borrowing money. We will not be attending discussions about control of donated funds. All communications about Noah's medical care will go through us and us alone. Any further reports to agencies from you or those acting on your behalf will be documented and addressed as harassment." You sure you want to send it? Kylie asked. It will light a match. I think the fire's already burning, I said. He nodded. Then it's better to make a line around it. I mailed it. Certified. This time the signature felt like a boundary I could see, not a performance. At home, I took stock. I pulled out every receipt from the light up the field night. I had emailed copies of checks people handed me in envelopes because I doubled up like that. Trust people and make sure they could always prove they trusted you later. The bank statements from the credit union fundraiser had not arrived in March like Tasha promised. In April, she sent a PDF with 3-line items and totals that didn't add up to the number I saw in the donation jar that night. I wrote reconcile in Sharpie and circled it. I emailed Tasha again. I copied myself. I added a deadline. It felt mean, which is what you call it when a woman takes a note out of your mother's playbook and makes it functional. I need a full accounting by Friday, I wrote. All deposits and withdrawals. All disbursements. Please include any administrative fees and their basis. She replied, fast. Of course, babe. Sending end of day. End of day came and went like a train you hear but don't see. The next day, my mom called and left a voicemail that started with a sigh. Honey, she said, if you're going to start playing lawyer, you're going to lose. Please stop this. Let us do what we promised to do. Ben listened to it sitting on the couch, his hand on Noah's small socked foot. She thinks I'm dying, he said, like it just occurred to him that the timeline in my mother's head didn't include miracles. She thinks she's smarter than dying. I leaned my head on his shoulder, careful not to nudge his port. She knows how to build spreadsheets, not bodies. Liz showed up with enchiladas and a box of legal pads because it felt right. She sat at our table and didn't say anything about the letter back from my parents, which arrived 2 days later and used words like irresponsible, unstable, incapable. She drew a heart on one of the pads and wrote, "List the names of the people who are on your team." We filled a page. Paul, Ms. Hollister, Dr. Chen, Latrice, the lady at the pharmacy who gave me a coupon code when the computer wouldn't, Jenna and Cheryl, the neighbor who mowed our yard the week Ben came home from surgery, Kylie, the grief support community coordinator I'd emailed at midnight and heard back from at 9:02 a.m. the next morning, the receptionist at Dr. Alvarez's who complimented my shoes on a day I would otherwise have cried in the lobby. When we were done, the list held the shape of a net. I put an extra note in the folder I labeled funeral because avoidance is not a strategy and also because I wanted to control anything I could. We chose the memorial hall at the Civic Center because the funeral home felt like a box that would shrink my lungs. We planned for music Ben liked. Songs that had an ache but not a wallow. I wrote his obituary on my laptop at the dining table while Noah asked if he could eat on the floor because the floor feels less loud. I let him. We made a picnic under the dimmer switch. In mid-June, after a good day when Ben ate 2 eggs and half a bagel, and we high-fived like it was a major athletic event, he woke in the night with a fever that climbed like it was angry he'd had a good day. We went back to Riverview. He held my hand so hard it felt like he was trying to push some of himself into my skin just in case. He never came home. I don't remember the exact words the doctor used because there are times the words turn into shapes and you only remember the outline. They moved me into the little room they say is for privacy and left the tissues like something useful had been invented. I heard Jenna before I saw her. She's a runner. She breathes like she could turn oxygen into a fierce thing. He died the day before the lanterns that year. The town still let them go for him. I watched lights float up from a hospital parking lot and thought, how can a thing be beautiful and infuriating at the same time? The morning of the memorial, I put on the dress I wore to a friend's wedding 4 years ago. It fit different, but it was still blue. Noah tugged at his too-tight cuff where I hadn't noticed a thread undone. He said, "I'm going to say my joke about the time Daddy called the squirrel a little dude," and I said, "Okay." My phone buzzed with a calendar alert. Attorney Kylie, 1 p.m., probate court. It popped up because I forgot to change the setting when we scheduled a protective order hearing against my parents. I hit snooze on my grief and told myself we would move that, cancel that, figure it out later. No part of me suspected the email waiting under the notification when the memorial began. The subject line said, "Notice of ex parte motion to enjoin distribution of life insurance proceeds." It was from a law firm I had never heard of but knew instantly by the font choices belonged to people like my dad. The first paragraph used my husband's full name and the phrase interim control to prevent waste/malfeasance, and then, somewhere in there, the name of a trust one did not set up, the Noah Avery Support Trust, trustee, Max Monroe. The email time stamped 8:31 a.m. A PDF attached. The hearing request was for 10:30 a.m. The memorial started at 9. It took my brain a few seconds to associate the words with the people. Then faster than that, I saw Tasha's purple pen, my mom's tight mouth, my dad's signature line. There it was, their application to freeze the life insurance payout and the funds from the credit union fundraiser, pending review of disbursement plans. They'd done it like a genius staging, hitting send, with a click time to ruin a morning with precision. My phone buzzed again. A text from Tasha. "We can't be part of a charade while there's active litigation. We'll plan something respectful when this is resolved. Please don't escalate. Please don't escalate." Like I was a bomb that would otherwise mind my own business. Noah tugged at my sleeve. "Mom," he said. "It's starting." I slid the phone under the program. The lilies trembled again because somebody, I would later learn it was Liz, had shifted the vase a little to make room for a plate of donuts. Noah stood up on the chair and reached for a glazed one with the seriousness of a person treading water. I wiped my face. I stood at the podium. I told the story of a man who fixed things, who sang little nonsense songs, who held our boy at 2 a.m. and whispered numbers like each of them could undo a fear. I did not mention the motion. I looked at the left side of the room once, by accident, because old habits reach for you. Empty chairs. Quiet. A little card on the first that said family, curling at the edges. The memorial was what it was, beautiful in a way that makes you angry, because it lands in your body like proof that love can hold you up even when you don't want to be held. Ben's coworkers told funny stories and cried in the doorway afterward like they were embarrassed to be seen grieving in a room that had seen grief before. Ms. Hollister squeezed my shoulder and said Noah could eat popsicles in her office any day, he didn't want the cafeteria. Paul held my hand in both of his and said, he taught the apprentices better than any manual. Jenna stood up and said something that broke a laugh out of me without asking permission. At 10:12 a.m., while people lined up to hug me and tell me about casseroles, my email pinged again. An amended motion. They were asking for a temporary restraining order as well, an injunction to prevent me from accessing any funds until competent fiduciary controls are in place. They attached supportive affidavits, including one from Tasha referencing concerns raised by the community regarding disbursement ethics, and one from my mother that included, I am devastated to have to take this step, but as a mother, I cannot watch my grandson be endangered by poor decision-making and a lack of formal controls. As a mother. Not as my mother. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. I wanted to walk up to the left side of the room and set the little family cards on fire one by one. Instead, I did the thing that keeps you human. I handed Noah his glove and told him to hang his little paper star on the memory board. He wrote, Daddy likes black licorice and I do not. We both like me, and drew a stick figure with huge eyes. After people had left and the room was just chairs and tissue bits and cups half full, I called Attorney Kiley. He picked up on the first ring. Yep, he said, like we'd been mid-conversation. I could hear printer noise in the background. We're on it. I filed a reply. I've already emailed opposing counsel. They're trying an emergency ex parte, which is a cute move when they know you can't reply. I'm calling the judge's coordinator to reschedule. Do not go to court today. Breathe. They didn't come, I said, voice smaller. They didn't come because they were filing. I know, he said. That's in the reply too. He told me it would be Monday. He told me to gather whatever I had. The fundraiser accounting. The emails. The text where Tasha texted me a photo of a check she deposited into the dedicated account, with the amount scribbled out like money was shy. The flyer that used my husband's smile. He reminded me of the thing I knew but needed to hear out loud. This looks like care to them. That doesn't make it care. As I hung up, Noah pulled on my sleeve. Grandpa said he can be the boss of my money, he said, whispering, as if he'd been keeping this nugget in his pocket. He told the lady that came to school for the big band thing. He says you get sad and spend wrong. Then he said a judge can fix that. What lady? I asked, heart sliding into a sprint. The lady with the clipboard, he said. The one with the flyers for the lantern thing. She has really shiny nails. Tasha. Of course. I pictured her at the high school that week, hair sprayed into place, telling someone something she wanted to be true. I pictured my father telling Noah things nobody should hand a child, like a burden disguised as knowledge. They were laying the narrative brick by brick, that they were the sober ones, the caretakers, the competent. They were writing a story in which I was the antagonist of their morality play. 2 hours after the memorial, after I sent Noah to Liz's for a nap that happened 5 minutes after he said he wasn't tired, I drove to Reed Credit Union. The lobby smelled like fake lemon and possibility. Tasha saw me, winced, then smoothed her face like people do when an audience shows up. We can't do this here, she said through her teeth. We absolutely can, I said. You have 10 minutes to print me the full accounting. Every deposit. Every withdrawal. The full ledger. And the names of everyone who authorized movement. Now. Her jaw worked. We're transitioning to a different. I pulled out my phone, tapped the voice memo app, and set it on the counter. I'm recording this conversation for my notes. She didn't like that. She put on her customer service voice, which was 2 shades more pleasant and 20 degrees colder. For privacy reasons, we can only provide ledger details to account owners. Which is me, I said, and slid a copy of the initial account document across to her. I had a copy because a teller named Beth had slipped it to me the night of the fundraiser with an apologetic look that said, "I'm sorry in advance for whatever they do to your trust." Tasha looked at the form and tried a smile. "Of course. Someone will bring those right out." While we waited, she crossed her arms and said, "You shouldn't have sent that letter to your parents. They're crushed." "Good," I said, and surprised both of us by saying it out loud. "You used your job to open an account you controlled. You told people we'd be transparent, and then you have been anything but. Give me the ledger." She leaned forward. "You're combusting, Lore. I'm trying to keep you from burning the last of your bridges." A teller brought a handful of printouts. Tasha took them. For a second, she considered not handing them to me. Then she did. She can read a room as well as she reads a spreadsheet. She saw me drawing a line she couldn't afford to be on the wrong side of in public. I read the ledger in the lobby. I highlighted and stapled in my head. Money in from checks with last names I recognized. Money out for administrative fees to a Reed Media LLC, Tasha's side business, for branding for $2,000. A $500 reimbursement to my mother for event supplies. $1,000 to consulting at Monroe Family Consulting. I stood very still. It is possible to stand so still your heart still makes a sound. "You took your cut," I said. "From a fundraiser for a dying man and a child with diabetes. You paid yourself. You paid my mother." "For what?" "Clipboards." Tasha stiffened. "We printed posters. We paid the high school's field fee. The high school waived it," I said, remembering the principal's text. She sent me a smiley face and "Are you kidding me? Try again." Tasha swallowed. "There are costs to doing things right. That's why you hire professionals. People need receipts." "People need receipts," I said, cutting her off. I held up the paper. "This is a receipt." I walked out of the credit union with copies, my hand shaking so hard I had to press the pages against my thigh to not crumple them. I drove to Kylie's office and slid the papers across his desk like I was handing over something radioactive. He scanned them. He made a low sound that is the lawyer's version of swearing loudly. "So they asked the court to freeze life insurance while they were skimming from the fundraiser," he said evenly. "Your father as trustee. Your best friend running interference. This is not subtle. It's also not clever in the way that matters." He took off his glasses and looked up at me like he could see the outline of my day and wanted to adjust the light. "We're going to court Monday," he said. "You don't talk to them between now and then. If they show up, you call 911 and then me. If they email, forward, don't reply." In the parking lot, before I put the car in reverse, I listened to Noah in a voice memo I didn't remember making. He'd recorded his little wish for the lanterns like they were birthday candles. "I hope Daddy can see my paper star," he said. "I hope the world is nice to my mom. I hope Grandpa says sorry." Smallest voice. Deepest truth. If I could have had anything that night, it would have been that last line coming true. Monday morning arrived gray and sticky. I wore the same blue dress and a blazer I borrowed from the teacher down the hall who always looks like she got dressed intentionally. Jenna came with me and sat on the bench outside courtroom 3B like she wanted to fight someone and was deciding whether it should be with words or shoulders. Opposing counsel wore a suit that cost too much and a smile that said he'd been hired by people who expected smiles to do a lot. My parents sat 2 rows back. My mother's jaw was set so tight her temples pulsed. My father looked bored, like court bored him because he was used to boardrooms. Tasha sat behind them, legs crossed, a notebook out like she was taking meeting minutes. She wore a blazer the shade of water you can't see through. The judge took the bench and said good morning in a way that made everyone merely citizens, not winners. She'd read the filings. She'd seen the email stamps. She'd seen the fundraiser ledger and Kylie's annotated version with circles on every payment to family or associated business. Opposing counsel went first because they'd filed first. He said things like prudence and fiduciary risk and reasonable interim control, and he pretended his client's move was about protecting a minor because, in a way that makes you want to eat drywall, it kind of was. Protection is a shape you can cut out of control and use as cover. Kylie stood and didn't smile. He used words like exploitative and strategic timing designed to inflict anguish. He used the phrase scheme of control. He said my family had weaponized process. He didn't get emotional because he didn't have to. The facts were shaped exactly like a story that ends badly for villains who don't think they're villains. The judge asked me to speak. A simple oath, my hand on air promising to tell the truth. I told it. I told the part where my parents brought a notary to a hospital room. I told the part where Tasha organized a community event and then took a cut. I told the part where CPS knocked because someone kept calling. I told about the email that arrived with the subject line shredding the last bit of grace I had for them. I kept my voice steady, not because I owed them that, but because I wanted the transcript to read like a person telling the truth with both feet on the ground. The judge looked at their side and said, "Is there any reason you did not inform the respondent of your intention to file prior to the morning of the memorial service?" Opposing counsel blathered. The judge cut him off with yes or no. My dad made an involuntary sound and then caught my mother's side eye like it hurt. "It was strategically advisable," he finally said. He said it like that made it less ugly. It made it more. Then, like a sideshow that turned main stage, Kylie brought up the fundraiser. He handed the judge copies of the ledger. He pointed to the payments to Reed Media and Monroe Consulting and Mrs. Monroe and the lack of any formal contract. Opposing counsel tried to object because the motion before the court was about life insurance, not a community fundraiser. Kylie raised an eyebrow. "It goes to credibility, Your Honor. Specifically, to their argument that this is about fiduciary responsibility rather than access." The judge sustained nothing and allowed everything and then leaned back. Wearing the robe, that half moment looked like she put on a mountain to look down from. "Here's what we're going to do," she said, voice crisp. "The motion to freeze is denied. There is no credible evidence of mismanagement by Ms. Avery. There is ample evidence of interference by the petitioners." My mother made a sound like a kettle starting to overboil. Tasha scribbled something in her notebook that made her pen tear the paper. "As to the fundraiser," the judge continued, "I am referring the matter to a magistrate for an accounting. Ms. Reed, you and the credit union will provide a full accounting within 30 days, including all receipts and disbursements and the authority for each. Any funds deemed misapplied will be returned to Ms. Avery as the intended beneficiary within 10 days of that finding. Any failure to provide an accounting will be referred to the State Attorney General's office." Opposing counsel started to speak. She put a hand up. "Don't," she said, and it was a whole paragraph. She turned to me. "Ms. Avery, if there are ongoing issues with harassment or interference, you can amend your protective order petition. For now, I am strongly recommending that the petitioners cease direct contact." We left the courtroom with a copy of the order that felt like a brick I wanted to frame. Jenna laughed once in the hallway and then cried into my shoulder tough enough to make me bounce. Kylie shook my hand like he was saying good job for not punching anyone. Outside, in the square, Liz waited with Noah. He held a paper bag with cookies in it. The sky was a dumb blue. People in suits swarmed around like they were too important to look at the sky at all. My phone buzzed and I expected anger. It was a text from Ms. Hollister. "We've got dinner delivery organized for 2 weeks. Don't argue. You can make a casserole later and bring it to someone else and the world will stay in balance. Also, tell Noah I have the new Lego kit for sick days." At home, there was a note on my porch from my father. I don't know how he got past the new lock and the chain we added. Tucked under the potted plant like a secret. "You've made a mistake," it said. "We won't forget this." Neither will I thought. But not the way you think I will. I took the letter inside and slid it into a clear sheet protector. I labeled it documentation. The fundraiser investigation moved fast because Kylie made it move fast. The magistrate issued an order for accounting and set a status conference that felt like the kind of thing you don't see on TV because it's mostly lawyers talking about paper. Tasha stalled. The credit union compliance office called me, apologized in that corporate way that says we are sorry a process was manipulated to cause distress. 2 weeks later, the accounting arrived. There were line items that had never been in my copy. Payments to the band, okay. Payments to a printing company in town, fine. But then, like I'd seen, the consulting fees to Reed Media and to Monroe Consulting and to my mother for event supplies. They added a flimsy coordination fees invoice conjured from a file I'm sure said, make it look legit. Kylie did his thing, filed a reply, appended all the emails where the high school waived fees, attached a signed statement from the printing company that they charged $189 for flyers, not $1,200. And he circled the part where the invoice Tasha submitted used a font not even available in the year it was supposedly dated. It was aggressive and a little funny and deeply satisfying. The magistrate found that $14,820 had been misapplied. He ordered it returned with a 5% surcharge. Tasha cut a check. My mom refused. The credit union wrote that portion out of their own community responsibility fund rather than litigate with someone who had likely been sending them fruit baskets for 10 years. In the letter accompanying the check, the compliance officer wrote, in a human hand, we're sorry. That mattered to me almost as much as the money. Tasha resigned. Or she was resigned, if you understand euphemisms. I heard from someone who heard from a teller that she cleaned out her office in a blazer with rolled-up sleeves and a face that said she didn't believe in consequences. My mother sent me one text, you have ruined my reputation. My father sent none. My best guess is that they returned to their own kitchen table and wrote a new list of what they could do to control a situation that had slipped like sand. At school, word got around the way it does in a town that isn't small, just connected. Parents brought me stories of their own mothers and the way they made casseroles and then billed them in guilt. Someone put a gift card to the bookstore in my desk with no name. Miss Hollister started showing up in my classroom during dismissal to stand next to me like a bouncer, but with better posture. Noah asked me one night if Grandpa was in a timeout. I said, kind of, and he accepted that answer because a timeout was a concept he understood. I filed the protective order. Not because I thought my father would hurt me physically, but because assault isn't just a hand. Harassment counts. Stalking counts. Interference with your grief definitely should count. A judge signed an order that said we were to have no contact for a year. I learned to turn off the part of me that worried about whether they were okay. I worried about whether my kid was okay. That was enough. That was my job. We drove by their street one day because I took a wrong turn. Noah recognized their blue door without trying. Do we need them? He asked. Like a charger or like a friend? Because sometimes you look like you need something and you go to Liz's. More like a charger, I said, after a beat. He nodded, solemn, like he could catalog this. Okay, he said. We have extra chargers at home. He went back to looking out the window and counting red cars like they were points in a game he hadn't told me the rules of. The first Monday with no lawyer emails felt like being out on a lake and discovering you'd forgotten how to row without being chased. The house was quiet in the morning in a way that made me want to fill it with noise and also keep it sacred. I made coffee. I poured it into Ben's mug because there are ways you keep someone in a room even when their body left it. I poured a little bit out for the sink like he used to joke, for the coffee gods, and then winced because we didn't do religion, and anyway, habits live in your hands longer than they should. I started sleeping again. Not every night. Enough that my body stopped sending me static at 3 a.m. I learned to say yes to offers. The old me would have said, no, we're fine. The new me said, yes, Tuesday would be perfect, and actually, if you're going to Kroger, can you grab the glucose tabs with the orange label? The people who showed up liked that I trusted them to show up again. I learned that support is a muscle other people like flexing. We made a ritual on Fridays. Noah and I walked to the river with 2 lanterns, the small kind you light without the whole town. He wrote a word on his, silly or brave or dinosaur. I wrote one on mine, steady or rest or boundary. We watched them glow against dusk, and then we blew them out because forever wasn't promised, but right now could be safe. I took leave from school, then I went back to half days. Paper-cut rhythms felt both pointless and necessary. It mattered to assign book reports and to grade papers with red hearts in the margins. The kids looked at me like they knew some adult thing had happened, and they were extra gentle in ways their bodies could manage. No pencils thrown that month. A boy who always chewed his hoodie strings handed me a freshly sharpened pencil because mine had run down to a stub. I almost cried and then I didn't. Miss Hollister started leaving little notes in my mailbox. You, me, coffee at 3? And you will not orchestrate your way out of this. Drink water. Jenna and Cheryl came over Saturdays. They brought their dog, a geriatric mutt named Radar who assumed everyone was his best friend. We spread out on the floor and sorted paperwork because grief can feel better if you give it tasks. We opened a 529 for Noah. We paid the next 6 months of the mortgage in a chunk because Kylie made me and because the judge's words had turned something that felt stolen into something that felt like a tool. I put a sticky note on the check that said, Ben, look, adulting. It helped. It hurt. Liz took Noah to soccer. He stood in the goal with his little hands up like he could hold the ball with Will alone. The other parents learned his signs, a hand on the head for low, Ms. Hollister's juice box stash under the bleachers. Nobody blinked when we paused practice for a prune pack and a test. A dad brought a cooler to keep insulin out of the sun. Another mom crocheted a sleeve for the Dexcom transmitter because the plastic irritated his skin. People are good in ways that make you less mad about the ways they aren't. I heard, through no channel I asked for, that Tasha moved to the next city over. Took a job at a marketing firm that had a more impressive lobby. A teller from the credit union sent me a picture. The Reed Credit Union sign was taken down. There's a new name now, Horizon Bank. Everything ends, and everything keeps going with new signage. My parents sent me a letter through Kylie because the protective order made their usual channels closed. They said I'd embarrassed them in this town. They said I'd misunderstood their intentions. They said they would always be open to discussing better structures, which is their way of saying they still want to be in charge if I ever get tired. I wrote back once. The letter was short. It had my name on top and 3 sentences. I said, "We are not in relationship right now because it is not safe for us emotionally or financially. If that changes in the future, it will be because you accept our boundaries, not because we drop them. Do not contact me directly. Go through counsel." It was both too much and not enough. It was not for them anyway. Noah started 1st grade. He walked into a classroom with an aquarium in the back and a teacher with a laugh that sounded like a bell. He wore a bracelet that said diabetic and also a smile that said don't treat me like I'm breakable. At back-to-school night, my parents weren't standing at the table to tell me what needed fixing. I stood alone and wrote my email on the list and swallowed the kind of quiet that tastes like clean water. Miss Hollister hugged me in the hallway. "You're doing amazing," she said, and I let it land. At home, I changed our dining table. We moved it from under the dimmer and put it by the window because Ben was the one who wanted the low light and I was the one who wanted to see the sky. We started eating there, just us. We talked about the weather like it mattered, and it did, because the world kept doing its thing whether we noticed or not. On weekends, we walked the trail where hawks circle. There's a bend where the river looks like it's holding its breath. Noah threw a stick into it one day and watched it drift. "Do you think Daddy can see our house from wherever?" he asked. "I know we don't do, you know. But do you think he can see our lights at night?" "I think he can see us trying," I said. He nodded, like that answer didn't require any structures. In October, a year after Ben died, we held a different lantern night. Not a fundraiser. No clipboards. Just friends and their kids and lemonade in cups with bees that kept thinking the sugar belonged to them. The paper lanterns went up slowly, one by one, no big release, just a quiet pattern that made you believe in patience. Noah wrote, "I like soccer. I like Mom. I miss Dad," and somewhere in the middle of those 3 lines, I felt something like steady. Not fixed. Nothing's fixed. Just steady. On the last lantern, I wrote a word and then didn't show anyone. I wrote boundary and then hoped it would hold. I watched it rise until it was just a dot. Liz bumped her shoulder into mine and put a donut into my hand because some things, the right things, should be automatic. I still have the binder. I will always have the binder. Receipts keep you honest and brave. They talk for you when your throat is tired. They tell a story when people make up their own. In the cabinet next to it, a stack of paper lanterns. A box of markers. Noah's juice boxes. A world we built. When I turn out the light in my kitchen, I switch it to bright. Ben wouldn't mind, I don't think. He wanted me to see the world even when he was here. He'd want us to see it now. What I learned. People will tell you family is everything. They will say it like a spell that keeps the wolves outside. What I learned is that family is a choice you make and protect. Sometimes that choice is blood. Sometimes it's the neighbor who texts you before you even know what you need. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors you can open and close with intention. If the only way someone loves you is by holding you by the throat, that isn't love. Get receipts. Keep the boring folder. Screenshot the texts and name the files. Not because you plan to fight, but because when you need to, having the right paper in the right order keeps your heart from doing all the work. If you are outmatched by confidence and volume, find someone who speaks law and is willing to say no on your behalf while you keep your hands free for the soft, hard business of living. Kids are truth. They'll say the part you're too polite to in the grocery store line. Listen. When Noah said he wanted the world to be nice to me, I realized you don't demand kindness from the people who want a stage. You build it around yourself with people whose kindness doesn't need an audience. Last, grief doesn't disappear. It changes clothes and shows up at weird times. But it also hands you moments so kind you want to kiss the air. A donut in your hand when your body forgets hunger. A Lego kit on a rainy day. The light of a lantern that lifts and lifts until it's just a dot, and you know you're looking at something you made with your own hands, held up by air and science and a community you chose. Author's note: if you're dealing with grief or family stress, you're not alone. Consider resources like the Dougy Center, National Support for Grieving Children and Families, cancerCare, free counseling, support groups, financial assistance, and your local legal aid society, civil legal help, often free. For help setting boundaries or processing family dynamics, look for therapists via Psychology Today or Open Path Collective. If stories like this help you feel less alone, consider following and sharing it with someone who might need it.